Your phone lights up on a Friday evening. A group chat, an invitation, a plan that everyone else seems excited about. And something in you immediately deflates. Not because you do not like these people, not because anything is wrong, just because the thought of getting dressed, driving somewhere, making conversation in a loud room for 2 hours, and then driving home again feels like more than you have right now. So you say you are tired, or you say maybe next time, or you come up with something that sounds more acceptable than the truth, which is that you were already exactly where you wanted to be. On your couch, in your space, with no one asking anything of you. And for a few minutes after you send the excuse, there is relief. And then, almost immediately after the relief, something else. A quiet question you have been asking yourself for longer than you can remember. Is something wrong with me? Why can everyone else just go out and have fun, while I have to talk myself into it every time? Why does home always feel like the answer to a question everyone else is not even asking? If that sounds familiar, this video is not going to tell you that you need to push yourself more, or get out of your comfort zone, or stop avoiding life. It is going to tell you what is actually happening in a brain that finds genuine peace at home, and why that is not a flaw you need to fix. It is a personality you need to understand. First, let us be clear about what we are not talking about. This is not about agoraphobia, a clinical fear of leaving safe spaces. This is not about depression keeping someone from engaging with the world. This is about a genuine, conscious, consistent preference for home over almost any external alternative. Psychologists call this a home-centered orientation, and it is far more common than the culture around you suggests. The reason it does not feel common is that the culture around you does not celebrate it. The culture celebrates going out, being seen, collecting experiences, staying busy, having plans. The person who genuinely prefers an evening at home over a night out is treated, at best, as someone who needs more confidence. At worst, as someone who is missing the point of being alive. But here is what the psychology actually shows. People who strongly prefer staying home are not avoiding the world. They are relating to the world differently. Their nervous systems process social stimulation more intensely than average. What registers as energizing for someone else, the noise, the movement, the unpredictability of a crowd, registers for them as draining. Not because they are weaker, because they are more responsive. The same nervous system that makes a crowded bar feel like too much is the same one that makes a quiet evening at home feel like more than enough. And that is not a deficiency. It is a difference. Here is something people who love staying home rarely say out loud. Social interaction costs them more than it costs other people. Not the genuine kind. Not the deep conversation with someone you actually trust. But the constant low-level performance that most social situations require. The smile when you pass someone in the hallway. The how are you exchange where neither person actually wants an honest answer. The appropriate enthusiasm when someone shares news you do not really care about. The way you have to manage your expression, your tone, your energy, your presence, every second you are in public. For some people, that performance is almost invisible. They barely notice the effort because it barely costs them anything. But for people who prefer home, that performance is visible and expensive. They are acutely aware of every small social script they are running. They notice the gap between what they are saying and what they actually feel. They spend energy not just on the interaction, but on managing the distance between their internal state and what the situation requires them to project. And by the time they get home, they are not tired from doing anything difficult. They are tired from performing something easy for longer than their nervous system wanted to. This is why the couch on a Friday night is not laziness. It is recovery. The person who spent 8 hours at work being professionally appropriate, navigating other people's needs, and managing their own reactions does not need more stimulation when they get home. They need the absence of it. They need a space where they can stop performing and just exist. And home, for these people, is the only place that space reliably exists. But here is what surprised me most when I looked at the psychology behind this. The people who love staying home are not just introverted. They have built something inside themselves that most people spend their entire social lives looking for outside. And once you understand what that is, the whole picture changes completely. Most people go out because they need something that the outside world provides: stimulation, connection, validation, the feeling of being part of something, the proof, renewed regularly, that they exist and matter to other people. None of that is wrong. It is human. But here is what is different about people who prefer home. At some point, through a combination of personality and experience, they developed the ability to generate most of those things from within. Their inner world is rich enough that they do not constantly need the outer world to fill it. They find stimulation in ideas, in projects, in the particular satisfaction of being absorbed in something they chose without anyone else's input. They find connection in depth rather than frequency, in a few relationships that go all the way down, rather than many that stay on the surface. They find a kind of validation that does not come from being seen by others, but from the quiet knowledge of their own standards and whether they are meeting them. Psychologists call this internal locus of control, the belief that your sense of worth and satisfaction comes primarily from within, rather than from external sources. And people who have developed it strongly are genuinely less dependent on social situations to feel okay. Not because they do not value people, because they have learned, usually through years of being alone with themselves, that their own company is not something to escape from. It is something to return to. And that capacity, the ability to be genuinely content in your own space with your own thoughts, is not something everyone has. It is something that takes a long time to build. And the people who have built it are not missing out on life. They have found a version of it that most people are still looking for. There is a word that gets used about people who prefer staying home: antisocial. And it is almost always wrong. Antisocial means indifferent or hostile to other people. What most homebodies actually are is selectively social. The distinction matters enormously. They do not dislike people. They dislike the particular kind of social interaction that most social situations require: the small talk, the surface-level exchange, the performance of enjoyment for the benefit of others. What they want, and often have in smaller doses, is the real thing. The conversation that goes somewhere. The evening with one or two people where no one is performing anything. The connection that does not require them to be a curated version of themselves. They are not avoiding people. They are being honest about which people and which situations are worth the cost. And in a culture that equates busyness with value and social activity with happiness, that honesty gets mistaken for a problem. But think about what they are actually saying when they decline an invitation to stand in a loud bar making conversation they will not remember. They are saying, "I know what I need." They are saying, "I am not willing to spend my limited energy on something that drains me, just because the culture says I should want it." They are saying, "My home, my space, my quiet is not a consolation prize. It is my actual preference." And in a world where most people spend enormous amounts of energy chasing external experiences to fill an internal gap, the person who has already found contentment within their own four walls has solved a problem that most people have not. Here is what people who love staying home understand that the culture does not talk about enough. Going out is not inherently more valuable than staying in. An evening spent absorbed in something you love, in a space that feels like yours, with the particular quiet that only exists when no one needs anything from you, is not a lesser experience than a crowded room. It is a different one. And for some nervous systems, it is a richer one. Research published in the journal Psychological Science has shown that introverted individuals derive greater satisfaction from quiet, low-stimulation activities than extroverted individuals. Not because they are missing something, but because their optimal level of stimulation is genuinely different. What is energizing for one nervous system is draining for another. Neither is correct. They are just calibrated differently. The homebody who turns down plans and spends Friday evening doing exactly what they wanted to do is not failing to live their life. They are living it, just quietly, on their own terms, without needing anyone else to witness it or validate that it counted.
And there is something in that. Something in the ability to find genuine satisfaction in a life that does not require constant external input to feel complete, that is worth more than a full social calendar. It is not what the culture sells, but it is, for the people who have it, more than enough. You are not antisocial. You are not broken. You are not missing out on the life you were supposed to be living. You are someone whose nervous system finds genuine peace in stillness, whose inner world is rich enough that the outer one does not have to be constantly stimulating to feel like enough, whose idea of a good evening has never required a crowd to be good. And in a culture that has spent a very long time telling you that what you need is to get out more, to push past your comfort zone, to stop being so quiet and start being more present, it is worth saying clearly, you were present. You were just present somewhere else, in your home, in your space, in the particular kind of aliveness that only happens when nothing is being asked of you and you are exactly where you want to be. That is not a small thing. That is actually quite rare. And if the person you are when no one is watching, the one who is perfectly content exactly where they are, is someone you genuinely like, then you have something most people are still looking for. If this felt like someone finally saying out loud what you have been living quietly for a long time, leave a comment below. You do not have to explain yourself. Just say, "This is me," and I will know exactly where you are. And if someone in your life always says no to plans and you have been wondering why, someone who seems perfectly happy at home while everyone else is out, send this to them. Not with a message, just send it. Sometimes being understood is the only thing a person needed all along. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.